go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Davidson Squibb. I'm a librarian here on our campus, and we're going to be discussing the New York Times, the digital version of this. And as I go through the digital New York Times, what I'm going to do first is just talk a little bit about how you get access to it. Then we'll do just a little bit about searching. It doesn't have very sophisticated searching, but we'll mention that. Also some browsing. There's just a lot within the New York Times available to us. And then into just some of its features that are available. And we'll probably kind of do a little bit more browsing. And if we have a moment, I may also say something about how to get access to some of the more historical content out of the New York Times as well. So the New York Times digital version, what I'm going to do to get to it is I'm going to go from the library's website to the databases and just search for New York Times initially. And I'm just doing this to show a couple things. One of them says New York Times Online. And so it says full access. This is what we're going to be looking at primarily today. Other things will come up because we have some New York Times content in other databases, but these databases don't have like all the full images and everything. At this New York Times in our databases website, there is the option here or a link to get to registering for it. So to use the web version, even though you're affiliated with UC Merced, you initially do have to register for it. When you do the initial registration, you also have to be connected on the virtual private network or the VPN. Thereafter, you don't have to be connected to the VPN to get access to the New York Times online. So I'm just going to try clicking this register. And I have found that that link, when you click register, does seem to take a few seconds to load. And then you're going to get to this page where you would search for Merced and select University of California, Merced. And then it goes through a short process of just creating your account. And this account will be good for a year. And then you can just, in a sense, renew it. And in that case, you have to be on the VPN again. So I've already had to do that once, but I already have an account. So I am just going to log into the New York Times. I'm going to click log in here. So when I come into the New York Times now, I'm using my UC Merced email address. But I used a password that is different than my single sign-on password when I created the account. So I'm going to now log into the New York Times, and this is where thereafter I would not need to be connected to the VPN, which is a really nice feature. So here we are at the New York Times. So we're going to move on from that access piece to just a little bit about search. So like many web pages, we have a little search thing up at the top, and you can do just very basic searches in here. So I'm just going to search for something like online education, pandemic. When I'm in these kinds of websites, I tend to just do, 2 or 3 keywords when I'm doing a search. If you had the actual title of a news article from the New York Times, you could put that in there. So here we get things October 20th, 2020, some other articles. This is telling me I have an opinion piece, politics, and it gives me a handful of filters. I could narrow it to a specific date range. So I might be saying, hey, I just want to see what is in here from the past month. So I could certainly select that instead, and it's nice that it tells me what date it's showing. And I could also limit by a specific section of the newspaper. So business, That might seem kind of weird. Maybe I want to go to the Learning Network because that seems more education focused. I could certainly do that. And then type. So that's just very basic search. Again, we could do something like Texas Power Grid, etc., just to see what we get. And then that took off any filters that I had, and I could reapply those. It's going to default by relevance. You could sort by newest if you wanted to, or by oldest. So that's certainly something that you can consider as well. So here we're getting some things from March 3rd, which is not surprising. So that's a little bit about the searching. I'm going to now move into browsing. And the reason I'm going to mention the browsing is because I think it's sometimes a challenge to get a sense of how much content is actually in the New York Times. So coming to that hamburger menu in the upper left can kind of help with that a little bit. So you're going to see these different sections of the paper that you can just navigate toward. So maybe you have a special interest that you want to go to, or you really like looking at the opinion pieces or editorials. So we kind of have these subject areas here initially, and then also arts, which they divide into some other categories. So again, this can be a good place to keep up on some of the arts pieces, or we could be searching for something like the Golden Globes, which just recently took place. And believe me, I sometimes get searching or browsing in here and just want to read many, many things. It's also kind of nice that they have their books, including bestsellers. So if you're looking for things that you might want to read, those are going to be available in here. You will notice that even though we are subscribing to this and we're logged into the New York Times, you're still going to get some advertisements, which can seem a little bit odd. There's also a style section, food. They publish recipes pretty often in here as well. Travel. The real estate I found is going to be focused more on the New York area, but they do have features such as something like the mortgage calculator in their real estate section. Obituaries. These are also regularly published. It can be really interesting to learn more about people, even through their obituaries. And then they've also pulled out their video. And this may be something to explore more. They actually produce some documentaries or short documentaries in here. This is just going to take, I think, a little bit to load. But this is one that just says how to stop the next pandemic. And this is, first of all, just doing a little bit of an advertisement, but then it's going to show, and I didn't share my sound on this, but you can tell this is about a 14-minute video. So they have some really interesting content for video in here as well. So back to our hamburger menu. I'm going to end up coming down to the more section where you can see that there's a lot more available to us. So again, some other things that you might be interested in, they have the crossword, and it looks to me like their main crossword they are not including in our subscription, but they do have things like these mini crosswords that you can basically try out and play online. And you can literally type things into here. I'm like, was looking at this going, I probably need to make this, part of my practice. So you can type in, and you can also say you want to check your work. So if I had something that was wrong in here, and auto check, it's telling me that my first letter is wrong. You can also do a reveal. I guess that's doing one at a time of words. So this can be kind of a fun feature that you can use that's available in the New York Times as well. So let me go back from that. Let me go back one more. So that was sort of our games. That was under more. That's where we got to.
Why should your business go hybrid? Here's the beauty.
You can also get to podcasts that they produce. So that's available in there, which can also be a really interesting. And I'm also going to go over to more photography, etc. The other piece that I really want to highlight is under the manage account, or this is at least one way to get to it. If you go to manage account, this is going to kind of give you a landing page. This is just telling me that I'm signed in with this email. But in the middle section, it says your articles and newsletters. And what you can do, and one thing that I've done, is you can sign up for newsletters from the New York Times. And it says manage newsletters. And if you click on this, it's going to give you all the options of basically their pre-curated letters that you can receive. So for me at the top, these are the items that I am currently subscribed to. And so I am every day on weekdays getting a digest called California Today. And this is going to have California related news pulled for me. So you can also remove those letters. If you decide you don't want it coming into your email anymore, you just click remove. You can also click this button that says see all newsletters. This is going to give you all the other options available to you. So for instance, they are currently doing a coronavirus briefing. If you just hit the plus sign, now I am registered for it. I get a confirmation email, which I can confirm. But things on cooking, which we've kind of already mentioned with the recipes, or education briefing. They also have some other briefings based on areas of the world, things on climate, on race. Their upshot is related more to politics and policy. But things like opinion, tech, lifestyle. So there is a lot to choose from here. And they also have something on books that they'll deliver to you twice a week. News quiz. So if you like to keep up on your news coverage and how you do on a quiz, you can subscribe to that as well. And honestly, for me right now, this is the way that I normally end up back into the New York Times. I will receive a digest of news items, and then I will often click on hyperlinks within that digest and get moved over into the New York Times. And then I can easily just log into it and access that content. So I've been enjoying the newsletters, but sometimes it's not super obvious how to get there. So I got there through the manage account. I think you can also get there through the subscribe, but both of those, no, that's not. That's telling you it wants you to subscribe when you don't have to. But it's a little bit hidden. So that's just a recommendation that I have if you're interested in that. Also, under the manage account, you may have noticed that it had an option for view your saved articles. So I'll show you how you can do that, but you can add things to a reading list that's kept here in the New York Times. I know personally, I tend to just bookmark things on my browser, but you could certainly add them to your reading list in the New York Times. So let me go back and just find something. I'm going to click on an article. And at the top, you're going to get all these sort of like social media related icons. but you are also going to see this outline of a bookmark, which should be near the top of the article. And if you click on that, that is going to just change to be a filled in bookmark. And that should now be showing on my reading list. So I'm just going to go back here for a moment. So I should see not only my TikTok feta cheese article, but now I also have this one about school guidelines. And then you can easily remove these because you could end up with a pretty long list. And this should just be, again, sharing possibilities if you wanted to email it or copy the link. So that's just something to be aware of. I feel like the bookmark feels kind of invisible when you're on an article page in the New York Times, but it is there and is available to you. So let's see. Also under the more, I'll just mention it, they have something called Times Machine. And this is where they have some of the back files of the newspaper, and you can go and look at an issue and then view it. So you're going to see kind of like this full page view of the New York Times. So that is one way to get to historical content. And that could be a cool way to look at it. If that's something that you're really interested in, I would also recommend going back to our databases listing. And for something like the New York Times, also considering just going into the New York Times historical newspaper, which goes from 1851 to 2008. It's a little bit easier to search the historical content. The drawback is you won't get the articles or the advertisements showing on the original page with the page setting, but just kind of mentioning that as an aside. And the one thing I'll just sort of end with and then open it for any questions. I'll mention that we do have also a library guide. This was linked on the events, on our events calendar, but this is just a guide that also says more about getting access to the New York Times. And it also mentions just some of the pieces that are in the New York Times that we looked at. So the Times Machine, the fact that you have lots of topics, newsletters. This says a little bit more about recommendations and the fact that there's a lot of multimedia in there as well. And you can also follow favorite sections with social media if you like. So this is just another resource that's available. But I'm just sort of looking at the time because I know we are at time where I said we would do this in 20 minutes. But does anyone want to put anything in the chat or unmute to ask questions? I can ask Kelly to just stop the recording at this point now too.